I have to make a confession.
You see the reason why people are worried.
Some scary things about AI.
Let's look at AI.
Dominance in the AI field.
A medical and technical miracle.
AI is definitely real.
A woman unable to speak regained that ability thanks to artificial intelligence.
Transgender person is a streamer. Provided voices from our library. This allows them to avoid harassment online.
You're not allowed to say who it is.
Not at all.
Margarita. We'll talk after the show.
I can tell you something.
You jumped headfirst into doing Darth Vader in Star Wars. Wait, how do you?
We did that.
Yeah, it just seems like quite a strange thing because the voice of Darth Vader is obviously it's iconic, it's heralded, it's kept, I think is the word. How can you go from starting a small company to suddenly your first big project is Darth Vader for Disney? Because that's quite a big step.
I wouldn't say it was our first big project, but actually, how it all started, it was just an idea of how to make synthetic speech, that quality that would go through the pickiest sound engineers in Hollywood studios. And it all started in 2015 with just an idea. We completed the challenge. In 2019, we had our first Hollywood project.
So it dawned on me while editing this episode that Margarita could be an AI. She might not be a real person. The voice that she was talking to me in might not even be her voice. This only occurred to me afterwards. That might be the case, it might not be the case, but how do we know online what is real and what isn't?
How it all works, we decided to go with speech-to-speech approach, which would mean we take recording of a real person, of a voice actor in many cases, and we train a model, AI model, on a voice that is needed for the project. And then we take performance from a real person and apply this needed voice to that, which means we take all the performance, all the emotions, all the intonations, everything from a real human, and then we apply different voice to that is needed for this project.
How do the actors feel? For example, obviously I know James Earl Jones is an older guy now. Do you know if he's heard the voice?
I'm not sure about that actually, because I was not handling this particular project, but I think probably Mark Hamill heard his voice. We also done young Luke Skywalker for The Mandalorian and for the Book of Boba Fett, and that was a de-aging project because they had to be young Luke Skywalker appearing in that series. Mark Hamill is not that young anymore, unfortunately. So we had to train our models on younger version of his voice, on all recordings of his voice, and then apply those to an actor who would perform.
Who is that? Is that another person entirely who would run that?
Yeah, depends on the project. It can be differently. So with de-aging projects, for example, it can be the same actor. There is a great case when we de-age kids, kinda. Imagine there is a voice actor who is a kid, who is a boy, and then he goes through puberty and his voice changes completely. And in this case, what we do, we train a model on his previous version of the voice when he was still a kid, and this actor keeps the job. So they keep the same actor because he performs well. The only problem is that their voice changed. And in this case, they keep the same actor who can still perform the same way as he would be performing before, but we apply his younger version of the voice on top of that.
Right, okay. So that's fascinating, and I'm glad you actually brought that up, because my dad and I were watching Terminator 2 Judgment Day the other day. Are you aware of this film?
I haven't seen, but I'm aware.
Oh, Margarita! It's one of the top tier action film. Might be the best action film ever made.
I have to make a confession.
Call me superstitious, but I think anyone working in AI should have seen Terminator 2. I know that's the extreme. I feel like people should have seen it. I feel like they should know what the possibilities are, just to be sure. Call me suspicious, bitch. Call me superstitious. Call me very superstitious. Writing on the wall. I don't know the next words. I don't think anyone knows the next words to that. Anyway, back to the episode. Bye!
I actually watched Star Wars during the process when I was interviewed for the job at Respeecher.
Wow. Oh my God. All right. Okay. So once this episode is done, I'm going to send you a list of great sci-fi films to work through. And then we'll come back in a month. We'll have another chat. Okay. So basically the reason I brought up Terminator 2 is because the young actor in that film, he experienced the same thing. So Edward Furlong, his voice broke during the film, and unfortunately back in the 90s, because I think it came out in 1991, the year I was born, he had to re-record his voiceover for every single scene and reapply that.
And there was another actor doing the lines, right?
No, it was still him. They still wanted him because they wanted the way he enunciated 3/4 of the way through the film, so there was a lot to redo.
Oh.
And I can't imagine how much easier the process would be with a piece of software like yours.
Yeah, exactly. This is like our mission, actually, to make the process easier. This is like our technology is not intended to like replace something. It's more like an enhancement tool, right? We can help make ADI process faster. We can make this process of changing a kid. They usually just change a kid in some projects. And in this case, this actor just keep the job and continue working on the project they love and do.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of avenue or train of thought that you've touched on there, like the protecting human jobs, is obviously something that we're seeing a lot of right now with AI tech. Like one of the previous episodes I recorded a few weeks ago was with Inevitable, which is an AI development company. They were making predictions of what we're going to see, and we are actually seeing those things of what they've been talking about to me for the past few months, which has been really, really interesting to see develop, and especially how fast we're starting to see those things come out in the world. Basically, the podcast community and the voice acting community that I'm in touch with, people that I know, they do feel a manner of concern for technology like this, and it's great that your company is there to almost reaffirm that their jobs are protected in hindsight almost, because you can redo it after the fact, like replacing the voice if someone's voice breaks, like you said, for example. Do you see the reason why people are worried? Like, how do you guys feel about that kind of thing, or what would you say to the people to reassure them that they're not going to be replaced?
I see all this conversation. It's now a hot topic about AI and AI speech synthesis. And I totally understand that there might be some scary things about AI. It might be partially applied to text-to-speech, because with text-to-speech, what they do is they just type in text and get an audio out of it. But for high-quality content, like projects which we work, like Hollywood projects, we see that there is still human is really needed for that. Text-to-speech that can replace a human fully, like all these intonations and emotions firstly, and then also the thing is when we are speaking, there are not only words, right? There are many different sounds, and they also can be like whispering or screaming or laughing or just when I don't know what to say next, and that's not something text-to-speech can do, as well as text-to-speech is quite limited still in terms of languages also. And this is also one of the reasons we are focused on speech-to-speech approach. We need a human, a voice actor to drive a model. And in this case, what our technology enhancement tool can do is detaching a person from a voice, so their voice can be used for different projects, and it allows voice actors to scale their projects while also giving a job to less high demand voice actors, if you understand what I'm saying. I get there is a person that can perform, they are professional voice actor, but their voice is not suitable for a job, but they can use another voice in this case and use their unique performance.
It's like filtering your voice to be more applicable to other jobs. Wow, that's really interesting, because then you could play completely other ages, other genders.
Exactly. We have, apart from our like studio project, White Glove Services, we have a product which is called Voice Marketplace. It's basically a library of voices that you can use, and we have around 100 voices there, from like kids to adults to older people, different genders, different ages, and we also added animals there, which is quite a fun thing to mention. So for the voice actor, it's possible now to take a project where there were needed, like, I don't know, deep male voice, old grandma, 10 years old kid, and a cat. And this all can be done by a voice actor, keeping the performance.
Do you just sit recording yourself doing different voices all the time? Because I think I would, going through something like that.
Sometimes we do. That's also a fun thing to play with these animals in our voice library. We have like tiger, cat, dog, and something. And it's actually pretty useful for many projects where animals are involved, because if you're like a sound editor and you need some particular dog bark with a particular timing, you have to go through a lot of data sets and find that bark. In our case, you can just go on our voice marketplace and sit there in the studio barking for some time until you get a bark back.
Until you get the one you want. Okay. That's very, very clever. Okay, that's something I didn't even think would be any kind of aspect to that. I actually have tried like voice synthesis myself. Like, it's something I have used. I did an experiment recently. Obviously, I'm a gamer. This is a gaming podcast. Well, predominantly gaming, but we also look into tech as well. So I did an experiment the other week where I changed my voice to a girl's voice, and I went on to Call of Duty. I absolutely kicked ass. I was kicking ass. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Just to see what the response was from male gamers being beat by a female, and it was not very nice. I can see why a lot of people don't like being female gamers with voice chat on. Is it something that's possible to do in a live setting like that? Like do you guys want to move more into a live setting, whether it's streaming or podcasting, that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. And we actually have a real-time setup now where we can change your voice in real time. One of the great cases we've done, there was a transgender person who reached out to us, who is a streamer and who gets bullied all the time because of this. They reached out to us asking for help, and what we did, we just provided a couple of voices from our library to find the suitable voice that would fit their personality and that they would feel comfortable with, and this allows them to avoid harassment online now.
So I just want to say I think this is an amazing use case for this technology. I did ask a few more questions, but Margarita isn't able to reveal the streamer. So just to be respectful, I chopped this part of the episode, so please excuse the abrupt change in subject there. It wasn't that I wasn't interested, it's just that I wasn't able to put that information out. Enjoy. I
have a couple of other questions that are sort of around the legacy of voices for characters, for example. So there's characters now in, for example, cartoon series. If you think like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, are older voices that we know from childhood, they've been going since the 50s, I think, something like that, like Bugs Bunny. So the characters already had multiple voice actors throughout the different generations of this character. Do you think there'll be a point where we have a fully synthesized voice that is synonymous with a character? And if you do, how do you think that's going to affect the first artificial character, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is actually a great question. So regarding the legacy of the character, it's not limited now to a human who is in charge of that character. So basically, when human ages, the character can be at the same age as they were before, or age with the human, depending what is needed for the project. And especially when someone passed away, the character could still have that voice and be alive. And that's something that we actually can do. But in this case, there still will be a change of voice actors who's driving that character, but we still would need voice actors to drive that. So it will be like consistent character through the time, but with another voice in it. Actually, we've done one interesting project like that. It's not Bugs Bunny, but that was Vince Lombardi for the Super Bowl opening. Vince Lombardi is a very famous American football coach for American football, and
American football coach for tennis, weirdly.
He was famous for his great speeches he would give and to make the players united and stuff like that. And what was done for that project, we found some like old recordings of him made in AI model with his voice, and then there was a hologram of Vince Lombardi speaking to the whole stadium and the whole population of the US, because everyone is watching the Super Bowl opening, encouraging them to stay united during difficult times of COVID. At the time it was a thing.
Right, wow, that's fascinating. You just blow my mind with everything you're saying, really, thinking about the aspects and the possibilities that this kind of technology can achieve. So fully synthesized voices you don't think will ever be a thing, like a completely artificial character?
This is very difficult, to make predictions about it, because the R&D process Is a very complicated thing. I remember when I joined Respeecher a bit more than 2 years ago, people were saying there that real time wouldn't be possible anytime soon. And then in a year, they're like, oh, we have a real time system in place now. And we are joining our company meeting and changing voices to our employees. This is how tech team makes
that's
fun.
what I was going to say. Like, I think I need to get hold of this voice market thing for this episode. I might do the intro in like 4 different voices and just cycle through them. I think that might be quite cool, so I might do that in post. That's really cool. Okay, so I have a couple of questions from the community around that I wanted to ask. So they said thank you for coming on the show, first of all, because they're interested to hear about your technology. This is from Marina Nani from the Facebook page Podcast Movement Community, and she said, what measures are in place to prevent unauthorized use of AI generated voices and to protect people, for example, like podcasters, with this being that community, from potential legal or ethical issues related to the voice copyright infringement or privacy violations? I'm aware that's a long question, and I'm sorry. If you want me to break that up into sections, we can. Let me know.
No, it's totally fine. And I totally understand where these questions are coming from. Mm-hmm. So in our case, it's more about creating ways of using this new technology in the most appropriate and respectful way. So it requires like 3 parties to be on board. So that should be content maker, then voice IP owner for sure, and then technology provider, service provider like Respeecher. And in our case, since the very beginning, we built a very strong ethics policy that always starts with having permission from the voice IP owner. And also we were lucky to start working with the best studios in Hollywood. And because our story started with Lucasfilm, and they are extremely respectful to their characters and to the way they treat their legacy, it was a great start for us. And we are participating in a lot of initiatives talking about how it should be regulated, encouraging other companies implement the same way of process that we do. And we don't launch a project if we don't have permission from the voice owner.
That's amazing. Okay. So how do you copyright your voice? Can anybody just go and copyright their voice? Or is it only when you go into doing a project like this that you then have to copyright it in that process?
Yeah, that is a great question. So actually, like in our system, what we have is that voice IP owner is always a voice IP owner for us. And then our client only owns the audio files that we deliver to them in terms of the project we are doing. So I'm not sure about like copyrighting the voice, but this is how we operate and this is how our system works. Okay,
all right. And I presume it's like they're not allowed to train the voice off the files that they've been given only when they create new files, is that right?
Not really. We can use existing recordings to clone a voice, but again, we need to understand that we have a consent from a person to clone their voice.
Okay, so and then I guess just sort of staying on the legal side of things, just a few like questions that come to mind. Are there new laws that are? I presume there are. Are there new laws that are being developed currently to protect stuff like this, like the IP, the voices, or because I think AI has been given very bad rep because of the art generation that's going on at the moment. So taking reference from other people's work, and obviously you know all about this, like it's just in case listeners somehow haven't heard about AI art generation that's been in the news for like the past 2 years. Yeah, it basically takes people's art for reference without their permission and generates new art that people are then passing off as their own. So these kind of laws, are there any pinch points that you guys face doing audio versions of that? Like, how do you make sure you cater to the laws, if there are any yet?
Yeah, that's a great topic, and it's been discussed much lately. And I'm not on the ethical team at Respeecher. We have an ethics department who is actually working on that, participating in the committees, advising. Actually, our head of ethics recently joined the Committee of AI in Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation. So from what I've heard from her, there are laws that will be implemented soon in European Union for sure. And as far as I'm concerned, US Senate is also now talking about it and trying to develop some regulations.
Right, okay. Well, we'll definitely keep in touch for that, because I'll be really interested to hear. Even if I can speak to them directly, I'd love to hear about that kind of stuff. Because I've got a lot of friends who are artists. I'm an artist myself, and obviously I make videos and stuff. So when people can just generate a video that would have taken me 10 hours to film, I'm like, oh, that hurts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if they have to have permission from you, it can be a great tool for you to scale yourself as a creator, and then maybe get a well-deserved vacation while you could be working on like different videos.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's not, I didn't want to come across like I feel like I am threatened by AI, because I'm one of the few, I think, in my community who doesn't really feel threatened by AI. And it's not because I understand it more, it's just because I see the applications and I see AI more as a tool for your tool belt. So learning all these different applications that you can use to make your job easier and more efficient, and easier to manage your time more efficiently.
Yeah, exactly.
I see them as a benefit.
The technology is already there, and the best thing we can do right now is to learn how to adopt it right and how to regulate it right. So it's better to learn about it and learn how it works. This way you can first keep yourself protected, because there might be people who would be misusing the technology in some ways, and also learn how you can apply it to your work, because it will just keep you on the top of the wave.
So are there any like interesting projects that you guys are working on currently? Anything, I don't know if you're allowed to say, there might be NDAs involved. If so, feel free to move on. But is there anything coming up in pipeline that you're working on?
There are a lot of exciting projects we're working on, which I cannot tell you about.
Damn it, Margarita! We'll talk after the show.
I can tell you something. We were credited in the recent God of War game, God of War Ragnarok, but I cannot tell you what exactly we did there.
You can't. Okay, right. Okay, so this is something that I found really interesting, because I wasn't aware that there were AI voices in God of War Ragnarok. I also wasn't aware that Darth Vader's voice was replicated for Obi-Wan. So I was quite shocked to find that out. And I was even talking to another voice actor who was in God of War Ragnarok the other day, and they were like, I didn't know that. And they were trying to find it online, and they only found out that there was a credit. But you're not allowed to say who it is.
Not at all.
Damn it. Okay.
Yeah, this is the main issue with this, right? We're working on so many exciting projects, and we are not allowed to talk about them. We worked on The Mandalorian. We knew about the appearance of Luke Skywalker, and we kept it in secret for almost a year before they released making of episode.
Wow. Oh my God, that must have been absolute torture. Like, especially if you knew people who were Star Wars fans.
Yeah, and like most of our team is. So
yeah, I can imagine. Like, everyone's a big nerd in this kind of industry. So yeah, other than you, like, I'm shocked that you still hadn't seen it. But yes, okay. Have you watched them all now? Like, have you got through all like?
Yeah. So during the interviewing process, I watched them all, and also in the right order. So how they were coming out back then.
Oh, so you did 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. There's another way you can watch it, apparently, for like your first time watch, and I've not known anyone who's watched it this way, and I want someone to do it and tell me what it's like, because you're supposed to watch 4 and 5, and then you find out that Luke Skywalker is Darth Vader's son. Spoilers for anyone who didn't know that. And then you go back to watch how he became Darth Vader. So then you watch 1, 2, 3, and then you watch the culmination of 6, Empire.
Yeah. So this is exactly what I did.
Oh, right. So you broke it up.
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Okay, right. Okay, good. Okay, good. And how was that? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, that was great. And I was surprised I haven't watched it before. But actually, when I should have watched it, I was really scared by everything. Like, my worst horror movie was the second part of Harry Potter. So
really? How come? Why? Are you scared of snakes? I know there's snakes and spiders in that movie.
Also, I couldn't watch Lord of the Rings. I was too scared. I don't know. That was a difficult time.
Have you watched those now? Have you watched The Lord of the Rings now?
Yeah. I've watched everything now.
Okay, good.
Except
Everything
for
I've seen. Yeah. Lord of the Rings is like, I think that is probably one of the most perfect cast movies ever made. Like, I couldn't see anyone else in those roles. I think it was perfect. The Hobbit, let's not get onto that, but the original trilogy, absolutely outstanding. So is there anything in gaming where you think this voice spec could be applied more that isn't currently?
Yes, for sure. There can be multiple ways of applying voice cloning to the game. So first of all, and what you think about, like, first thing when you learn about voice cloning projects we done would be using famous voices for games. A good example of something would be Cyberpunk and Keanu Reeves, where he had to record scenes himself, but he could chill somewhere on a yacht or something and get another actor job instead.
Yeah.
And also there are like so many cases connected to famous voice in a game. Like it can be a football player or famous sports commentator for some sports game. And also, again, with kids' voices and this de-aging of a kid who grow up. It's also a big case for us, and also consider it cloning a famous voice because they already have been in a title. And then another cool thing we can do is cross-lingual voice cloning, which would basically mean that we can make persons speak a language they never spoke or never learned. A simple example would be, again, Keanu Reeves. And then imagine for, I don't know, Chinese localization, they hire a Chinese actor, but apply Keanu Reeves' voice to that. And then the whole world playing Cyberpunk hears Keanu Reeves' voice in different languages.
So you get like a cohesive experience of how the project was supposed to be heard. Okay, that's very cool. Right. Is that possible in real time? I'm going to ask now a question. Is that possible in real time? But I know you said previously you thought the other thing wasn't possible in real time, and it turned out it was. So it may come to that point, right?
Yeah, it is possible in real time. And what we also have now is accent conversion. For accent, it's a bit more complicated because accent consists of some content and then of phonemes pronunciation. So with our speech-to-speech system, we cannot change the content. So we cannot change the words people are using, but we can change the way they pronounce phonemes. So for example, if we are going from British to American accent, it's possible for us to change phonemes, but you would need to change words they're using to American ones.
Okay, right. For example, Scottish, they say canny instead of can't. So you'd have to make sure that the voice actor said can't. Okay.
Exactly. And that's also one of the use cases for gaming industry. For example, for a game where the player is able to like create a character for themselves, we can provide a large variety of voices, like voices from our library, as well as provide accented models. So you could not only pick a voice you want to your character to speak with, but you also can pick if they're British or American or Indian or, I don't know, Slavic.
This is so cool. Is there anything that you feel is important that we haven't spoken about yet?
Yeah, we spoke about Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
We're covering all the nerd bases so far. Have you been approached by anything to do with music currently?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So again, because our technology is speech-to-speech, it's possible to convert singing. And it's a bit different from speech because of these long vowels, and it has some limitations still, but we can do singing. And we actually did a great project with Aloe Black, who we made to sing a song in 5 different languages. So we recorded him, he's an English speaker, and then we recorded some other like source actors who would be driving the model in French, Chinese, and I think Spanish, something else. Then we applied Aloe Black voice to that. So that's also possible, as well as a great case when we can bring some amazing characters alive. Like we did metaphysics for America's Got Talent. We did the voice of Elvis. So metaphysics are doing visual parts. And we did Elvis. We had very limited time, so we didn't do singing. There was one who was singing, but we did the first introduction where Elvis sounded exactly as he sounded in his old interviews.
Wow, that's so cool. Because this is something we were discussing at work the other day. I work in digital marketing, and I'm a videographer for the production department. And we have our weekly creative meetings where all the creatives get together, whether it's the artists, the people who do all the graphics, whether it's like scheduling or people like myself. And this came up about music because we were talking about the voice cloned covers that you see on YouTube at the moment, where it's like Patrick from SpongeBob singing Queen, or it's Michael Jackson singing a Queen song, or that kind of stuff. And we were trying to make predictions of what will come next from this kind of thing. And when it hits the mainstream, do you have any predictions that you think might come to fruition, being in a position such as yourself, who can obviously see a lot further forward than many of us can who don't work in the space?
For the singing, again, as I said, it's more complicated than converting just speech, and it also has some limitations. So for opera singing, for example, it still struggles too much to...
I struggle to listen to it, let alone sing it. Yeah.
But obviously, model doesn't like opera singing as well. Then I personally think that there is a lot of cool things that is possible to do with AI and be creative, fully creative, not limited by anything. But there will be like a separation in audiences who want that, basically. There are people who will be listening to normal music, and there will be people who would be interested in listening to something that was created with AI. And I think it's going to be the same with everything. Like we read books now, we read paper books, and then we read on our iPad or something. So
Kindle,
it's just different.
Audiobooks. Yeah. Now, see, now that's a cool thing to have the aspect of whether it's a digital learning, whether it's something like an app like Blinkist, not a sponsor. However, if you want to sponsor us, feel free. I use their platform anyway. I don't know if have you heard of Blinkist? So it's audiobooks that are learning books. So it's e-learning but through audio, basically. So it's people reading famous books like the 4-Hour Work Week, all stuff like that, and personal development books. But to have these famous voices reading audiobooks would be very, very cool. And to have the point where people... I'm just giving your company ideas now and not copywriting them. Feel free to take these, Margarita, but if you use them, I want a little bit of a kickback, okay? You could have all these people... you could train a learning book about physics on Albert Einstein's voice and have that read to you. You look to the side then like that's happening. Is that happening?
If there... And there is enough material to clone Einstein. That is also an issue when we are talking about historical figures. Sometimes there is not enough material, unfortunately, to clone their voice and to just imagine their voice. This is not what we actually do. We are cloning voices, so we need some reference. But good that you mentioned audiobooks. There are great cases for that. So either it can be like we can clone actor and author's voice. They are not trained to be voice actor, to record audiobooks themselves, but they can publish audiobooks in their own voice using a professional voice actor to narrate that. Another great case for audiobooks would be, again, a variety of voices. When one person recorded an audiobook, but then we convert it into hundreds of voices from our library, and you can pick who you want to listen to Deep Male or Kate or Granny.
Yeah, like reading a grandma bedtime story. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to singing then, so this is something I should have asked a moment ago when we were talking about singing, but it's just popped into my head now. So the singers that are being used to base the model on top of, so underneath the layer of the AI voice, presumably they need to have the same amount of singing skill as the voice that's being put over the top. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly, I would say. They definitely need singing skills. It's not like I cannot sing, so I cannot be source voice for that. So you have to have singing skills. You have to be also a professional singer to do that.
Right, okay.
One cool thing that we didn't talk about, most of the cases we discussed are focused on entertainment space, like films, games, books. But there are also much more to that, what we are doing. First, we have a health initiative where we help people who have issues with voice. For example, people who had laryngectomy and they cannot speak properly anymore.
Wow.
And there is another cool thing we do. We are working now in cybersecurity direction, where we can do voice ID penetration testing to make sure your bank voice ID is working well and won't allow like cloned voice to go through. Or we can anonymize people. For example, for a documentary where people want to tell the truth, and they will be telling it emotionally. And usually in documentaries, they're using some voice morphers that make it sound kind of like a robot.
You give the low voice robot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it loses the emotion from that. But also it's possible to anonymize war victims, for example, which seems like a more impactful scene, especially given the situation in Ukraine right now. We're going through the Russians' invasion for some time, and I just personally think that this is great and impactful.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you guys are okay in Ukraine. I'm glad you're all right, obviously, and you and your team are. I can imagine it's a pretty difficult thing to go through. It's like, it's unfathomable for us in the UK to just be like, we can't do anything. Like, help. We know people who have gone over to help, which is great. Like, a couple of my dad's friends have gone over to help, which is very brave of him to do, and I imagine he'll have issues when he comes back, but it's great that those people have gone to help. The fact that your team it's the medical aspect that I wanted to just bring up then, because you're literally giving voices back to people who have lost their voices.
Yeah.
Like, that must be an incredible, like, science fictioning for these people who have thought they'll never be able to speak again. What's the process there? Is it training on like old videos of them, or like recordings, or like how do you even begin to do that?
Yeah, that is basically the same process as we do always. We need recordings in order to make it possible. There are cases when people reach out to us before they're about to lose a voice, before the surgery, and they still have a time to record themselves for that. In case it's a different timing, then we would need some recordings of their voice that was recorded previously.
Right, okay, right. Well, that's a great use for this technology, and I think that is absolutely an amazing thing to be doing, to be helping people like that. I heard a story recently where there were, I think it was about 5 or 6 people who were all wheelchair bound. They used a computer speech synthesis module, think like Stephen Hawking's, that kind of speech generation, and it was impossible to know who was talking. They were asking questions to each other, but obviously they all had the same voice generation software. So the challenge then was, how do you know who's speaking? And I feel like to be a person in that situation must have been so frustrating to not be able to realize that you're the one asking a question to someone. And I think something like what you're doing there, it solves that problem so wonderfully, and I hope that more people will get onto your company to do that kind of thing, because that's absolutely amazing. So I applaud you guys for that wholeheartedly. And with that lovely little ending, I think that's 40 minutes. That's a 40-minute podcast. As you can see, it goes very, very